Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. So looking at the world strategic situation, our watchword continues to be July 1914, the slide into something unthinkable going on to some degree because of the ineptitude and stupidity, but also the evil and the conniving and the scheming of evil officials in the foreign ministries and defense establishments, especially here in the United States, in Britain, in France, in NATO, and in the associated countries. Now, the big news this morning is a large bomb in the frontier agencies of Pakistan. It is the graduating class of the Pakistani frontier rangers at one of their training schools. Note the method. This was the method used by the Muslim Brotherhood in, I believe, Aleppo in 1979. They go to the graduation and they kill the graduating class. That was in 1979. I believe it was the Syrian Air Force Academy, where 60, 70 cadets were killed and another 100 or so wounded in such an attack. So this is a very significant thing, because this is now the Pakistani Taliban attacking Pakistan. Something new, something unusual. The Pakistani Taliban had a peace with Pakistan. That's the whole goal of the Pakistan policy, is not to have a civil war with the Pashtun population, the Pakistani Taliban, attacking Pakistan. And this is now exactly what I told you last week. When the U.S. says make peace in Pakistan, what they mean by that is the U.S. makes a deal with the Taliban on both sides of the border that the main enemy of the Taliban, be it the Afghan side or the Pakistani side, this is indifferent to these Pashtuns, that the Pashtuns will turn their attacks against the Pakistani armed forces, the representatives of the central government of Islamabad. So this is exactly what you were warned to look for in the wake now of this entire bin Laden circus, which is now coming to the end of its second week. So remember, the entire goal of the policy is to create and exacerbate a civil war inside Pakistan. The goal is the dismemberment of Pakistan, the partition, subdivision, balkanization of Pakistan into Punjab, Sindh, Balochistan, Pashtunistan. Reason? No Pakistan energy corridor, no pipeline from Iran into China, no development of the port of Gwadar, no chance of an Iran to India pipeline, which would give India a reason to be drawn into peaceful cooperation and away from the blandishments of the U.S.-Indian nuclear deal that makes India into cannon fodder. It makes India into the continental dagger, the Eurasian continental dagger of the Anglo-Americans. So that is an important turning point. Now, concerning the immediate aftermath of this bin Laden circus, we're told that there was contradictory advice to Obama. The main thing we've had in the past week, it started last Saturday with bin Laden reality TV, bin Laden cam, right? Something for the voyeurs, right? No longer Jenny cam or whatever that was, but bin Laden cam. So you could see bin Laden home movies, bin Laden home television, bin Laden practicing his speeches. Interesting variation that this, instead of the fat bin Laden, the thin bin Laden, the angry bin Laden, the jovial bin Laden, now it's the old bin Laden. I think it's basically telegraphing subliminally to the young nihilists. If you're a young nihilist, this is not your guy. You need to go with Assange if you want nihilism, but not bin Laden, because he's simply too old, and that's the end of him. So don't even worry about what happened to him. But the big thing here, of course, is This is psychological warfare. This is an attempt to establish the credibility of a new myth. The new meme of the myth is now this: the cache, the treasure trove, the terabytes, the largest grab of information of any top leader of the so-called Al-Qaeda. And I have to say pseudo, alleged, in quotes, you get the idea. I don't believe any of this. But this is the myth that they're now trying to sell you. The treasure trove, the mother lode, the cache, the terabytes. This is now Donnellan, the new head of the U.S. National Security Council, a guy who talks in numbered talking points. You ask him a question, he'll say, there are two things, 1 and 2, or, well, the factors here are 1, 2, and 3. Very interesting. He's a compulsive neurotic. But the idea is that the treasure trove, the mother lode, the cache, the terabytes, the largest cache of intelligence from any terrorist leader ever, and it's the equivalent of a small college library. So this is really what they're trying to push. Compare it to WikiLeaks. This is very comparable to WikiLeaks. This is actually the CIA becoming its own WikiLeaks from many points of view. In other words, the credibility of this thing builds on the previous accreditation among fools and dupes of the WikiLeaks the document dumps. Remember, with WikiLeaks, they started off with something shocking, right? The machine gunning of the crowd of Iraqis, obviously a war crime, obviously horrendous. The incident known, the pictures had never been seen. This was shocking. This got WikiLeaks' attention. And you can go back to the Kuwait incubator babies and Jessica Lynch and all the rest of it, the way they market these things. But this time around, it starts with human interest. It starts with the fascination of seeing bin Laden in his shabby villa. The villa has now gone from luxurious to shabby. The television is not a luxurious flat screen, but an old tabletop television, I guess, with rabbit ears or whatever he's got. But the idea is you're supposed to be drawn into this narrative, and you're supposed to find fault with this or that little aspect of the narrative while you're sucked in more and more to the narrative as a whole. And in this way, you become duped, you become a cretin, and you become a useful idiot for the CIA to the extent that you're willing to talk about any of this stuff. We're told by the same Wurlitzer myth factory that bin Laden was afraid to use his email, so he would use thumb drives. People would go to internet cafes, couriers would go. He was in communication with his people. A lot of people have pointed out the fact that there were no, armed guards, that the people there were not really armed, that the shooting was, first there was a lot of shooting, then there was none, then there's a little bit, and I guess a little bit is where it stayed. It's pretty clear what this was. This was a double operation. This was a pseudo bin Laden headquarters that was mainly there to issue these audio tapes, which you're not allowed to hear, right? They don't want you to hear what's in these tapes. They show you the pictures, but they won't let you hear the sound. Well, and then the other thing, of course, is he was communicating with various groups, patsies, dupes, fanatics, psychotics, mercenaries, double agents, misfits, you know the drill, across the world, right? He'd get communications from China or Russia, from Chinese Turkestan or Tibet or Chechnya or the Caucasus in general or Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and so forth. And they'd ask him what to do, and this pseudo bin Laden operating under the aegis of the CIA would tell them who the targets were, of course, and they were the targets of U.S. and British intelligence, except at a certain point in this world of treachery, they decided to go in and liquidate their own operation, operating from the nearby CIA safe house, which we're now told there was a safe house there for a long time. I would call that a liaison office, not a safe house. Back in a minute.